My name is H. Fong. I'm with RosettaNet Malaysia. I'm the Executive Director. RosettaNet, for all intents and purposes, is a business process standard that trading partners or companies can use when they want to communicate. RosettaNet was founded in 1998 in Santa Ana, and throughout the past years, it's been almost 10 years now, we have actually grown from Santa Ana to having presence in 10 different countries. The Malaysian affiliate, or the Malaysia RosettaNet, was founded in 2002 to promote the RosettaNet standards in Malaysia. And that was important because a lot of manufacturing companies, the likes of Intel and Dell and what have you, are based in Malaysia, and a lot of business transactions occur from Malaysia. I've been with RosettaNet for the past 3 years. Mainly what we do is, or rather what I do in RosettaNet, is to go out to evangelize RosettaNet, to make sure that big organizations consider RosettaNet when they're thinking about a supply chain standard, and also to make sure that smaller organizations realize the value of standardization. It varies actually from the biggest hub, the biggest manufacturer, to the smallest SME that has like 2 staff working. So it's a whole range of people that we deal with in Malaysia. It's very diverse. Perhaps one example would be, and to give you a bit of a context, the Malaysian government, the chairman of RosettaNet Malaysia comes from the government. So the Malaysian government has a grant for Malaysian companies that want to implement the RosettaNet standards. But before any grant is given, of course, due diligence has to be done. We visit the companies, we go through the application forms and what have you. For smaller companies, for example, a couple of months ago, we received an application. We went and we couldn't even find the small company because they didn't even have a billboard or signage of any kind. But the moment you found it, it's just one man, and he provides boxes and crates to Hewlett-Packard and to AMD and to Dell. And in order to actually deal with those companies, he has to be on RosettaNet because that's what they accept. So by enabling him, or rather by showing him the way to get enabled on RosettaNet, we provide value for the small businesses that they can deal with, so that they can deal with bigger manufacturers. RosettaNet, and to a typical small business, probably they don't even know that they're implementing RosettaNet. What they see is the application that they run, may it be a purchase order application, an accounting application, but the moment they actually send transmit, or they click on transmit rather, and a document gets sent from their end to another trading partner, and that document format itself, that standard, is usually RosettaNet. So we define the format, or rather the standard of document that goes across from trading partner to trading partner. The RosettaNet standard, if you look very closely to it, it's divided into what we call 7 clusters. So, for example, cluster 3 is procurement. Within each cluster, we subdivide it into something that's called segments. And let me not get into segments, but within segments you have the lowest denomination is known as a PIP, or partner interface process. A PIP is actually an XML document that has all the relevant fields towards that specific business process. So for example, PIP 3A4 is for invoicing. And within the PIP 3A4, you would have an XML document that defines all the fields that are in a typical purchase order. RosettaNet itself is a standard organization, or standards organization. The beauty of RosettaNet would be that before a standard, before a PIP, a partner interface process, is created, you need to have a certain consensus within the members before we even design that standard. Immediately after that standard is created, or rather a specific PIP is created, you have a group of people who are already committed into implementing the standard. So the standards creation within RosettaNet is very much bottom-up. The members dictate to RosettaNet what they want, and that standard gets created. The beauty or the strength of having a standard that is bottom-up or is created bottom-up is you get each and every member that wants to be involved in the standards creation process actually getting involved. Half the time standards, or rather the members that want to be involved, get involved in very directly. They sponsor staff, resources. So in RosettaNet itself, you would find that at one point of time, probably about half or 50% of all the staff are seconded, in a sense that like Intel would loan us their staff to work on a process that they want us to work on. Microsoft has actually sponsored staff before also, similarly with Sony and what have you. So it's user involvement, that sums it up. It's user involvement in the process, in the standards creation process, that makes it very powerful, because you get everyone's point of view in the actual standard itself. Another beauty of the RosettaNet standards is we constantly seek out other standards that we can collaborate with, instead of going head-to-head or instead of competing with standards or other standards organization. We seek to create a very synergistic relationship with other standards organizations. Right. Probably a very good example is at the recent RosettaNet Global Conference in Penang. Microsoft and RosettaNet Malaysia demonstrated the synergistic relationship between OpenXML that was implemented using Office 2007 with RosettaNet PIPs and with with EPC RFID. With the recent RosettaNet Global Conference in Penang in October, Microsoft Malaysia and RosettaNet Malaysia collaborated to show that two standards, OpenXML, implemented through Office 2007 and RosettaNet PIPs, can actually work synergistically together. So in that demonstration, what we proved was how an SME could use OpenXML-based RosettaNet PIPs and use email to transmit that to a trading partner, instead of the usual direct connectivity that RosettaNet entails. RosettaNet Malaysia has never been opposed to working with either OpenXML or ODF. Being in open standards, what we have done is we have actually released our specifications to the public, and we leave it for other organizations like OpenXML or ODF to pick it up and use RosettaNet. So what has happened with OpenXML is Microsoft has actually used OpenXML in the Office 2007 with RosettaNet. So it was more of Microsoft looking into a RosettaNet PIP and OpenXML and using that to its full advantage. It was more of a collaboration between Microsoft Malaysia and RosettaNet Malaysia. What has happened is, again, with RosettaNet standards, we release it out to the public, and it was Microsoft Malaysia that has picked up the RAE, or the RosettaNet Automated Enablement RosettaNet standards, and decided that that would work really well with OpenXML. Our members have reacted very positively with the OpenXML implementation by Office 2007. Probably also because there is a wide acceptance of Office 2007 as the productivity tool within small businesses. Our larger members have not reacted negatively to OpenXML, probably because the OpenXML implementation of RosettaNet is mainly catered for small to medium-sized businesses. So it doesn't affect them directly. Rather, this was more catered towards small businesses. The investments that larger companies make in their supply chain connectivity, the return on investments, rather, comes from their ability to ramp up the supply chain, their trading partners. And with current technologies, with current implementations of RosettaNet, a majority of the bigger organizations have realized that they can only ramp up approximately 20% of the supply chain. based on the direct implementation of RosettaNet. With RAE, or the RosettaNet Automated Enablement, RosettaNet hopes to enable a higher percentage than 20%, so that bigger multinationals can realize better profits or better investment returns on the supply chain software or supply chain connectivity. With Office 2007 and with the implementation of Open XML within Office 2007, where a smaller company can use the existing Office software to send RosettaNet pips, that would help tremendously in such that bigger organizations right now can push RosettaNet connectivity to their smaller trading partners with less resistance. The structure of RosettaNet Malaysia is unique in the sense that it involves the government and the business. So this is probably one of the only organizations that you will find that you have different levels of government working together with different levels of businesses in one singular organization. So the head, or rather the chairman of RosettaNet, comes from the government itself. Yeah, actually, RosettaNet Malaysia was founded in 2002 after the budget speech made by the then Prime Minister Tun Dr. Mahathir. And in his speech, he mentioned that in order for small businesses in Malaysia to be competitive, small businesses really need to get on board the global supply chain to adhere to a certain internet-based standards when they want to deal with bigger multinationals. So it is also another common fact that in Malaysia, 99% of all the businesses are small. So it is to the advantage of the government that the smaller players in Malaysia, the 99% of the companies in Malaysia, are able to deal with the bigger multinationals, are able to trade with the bigger multinationals using a standard like RosettaNet. This is fairly new, so we have just barely started working together. It's been about 6 months, so we have not seen anything tangible come from that yet, but it is very promising. Using Office, yes, but using Office to send RosettaNet pips, not at the moment. Choice is always good. Okay, let me rephrase that again. I think it is to the benefit of the community to have a choice of standards to pick from. In a way that I think the community knows best what they would need to use or what they would need to look for in a standard. With 2 standards, probably not, but probably if you have a whole bunch of standards, definitely. With 2 dominant standards, the worst case scenario is you have a more dominant one and a less dominant one. And bigger companies, bigger hubs, for example, would need to support 2 standards. That would pretty much increase the cost for our organization, because then you need to support 2 standards. It fully depends on the organization itself. If you are big enough to dictate what standard that you want to choose, then probably the negative impact would not fall onto you, but rather with the smaller trading partners that you deal with, which have to actually probably support 2 different standards because you deal with multiple hubs.